Hello everyone, please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our stories.
Snow drifted steadily outside. The world beyond the window transformed into a quiet wonderland of white. Each flake seemed to fall in slow motion, settling over the garden, softening the sharpness of bare branches and the cold gray tiles above. The early morning sky, a gentle shade of gray, glimmered with the promise of sunlight, and the faintest golden rays danced across the thin sheet of ice that blanketed the earth. It was Christmas morning, and the hush of the world made it feel as if time itself was holding its breath, waiting for something magical to begin. Inside, the warmth of the room was a world apart from the chill outside. The fireplace crackled softly, its orange glow flickering against the walls and casting shadows that danced like old friends. The air was scented with pine and the faintest trace of cinnamon, mingling with the comforting aroma of burning wood. In a cozy corner, a small boy slept deeply, cocooned in a red wool blanket trimmed with snowy white. His cheeks were rosy, his eyelashes fluttering as he dreamed. Even in sleep there was a trace of a smile on his lips, as if he could sense the joy and anticipation that filled the house. From somewhere far off, the bells of the village church rang out, their sound delicate yet clear, weaving through the quiet and announcing the arrival of a day unlike any other. The boy stirred, shifting beneath his blanket, and slowly, his eyes blinked open. For a moment he simply listened, to the bells, to the crackling fire, to the silence that felt full of possibility. Then, as if remembering something wonderful, he sat up, his gaze drawn to the end of his bed. There, hanging just as it had been the night before, was his Christmas stocking. The fabric sagged under the weight of hidden treasures, its shape lumpy with surprises. Eagerly the boy reached for it, his small hands trembling with excitement. He tugged the stocking into his lap, feeling the mysterious shapes inside, and began to pull out his gifts one by one. First came a handful of brightly wrapped lollipops, their colors shining even in the soft morning light. Next, a tiny tin train, its wheels spinning as he rolled it across the blanket. Then a picture book, its cover promising stories yet to be discovered. But nestled among these cheerful things was something quite different. A toy rabbit. He was not the sort of toy that drew attention with clever tricks or flashing lights. Instead, the rabbit was made of soft silk, his fur pale brown with creamy patches, his long ears flopping gently to one side. His nose was a simple pink stitch, and his eyes were two black buttons that sparkled quietly, reflecting the light in a way that made them seem almost alive. There were no ribbons or boxes, no shiny wrappings to proclaim his arrival. He was simply there, waiting. The boy picked up the rabbit and turned him over in his hands. For a moment he studied the way the ears drooped, the gentle curve of the stitched smile. He smiled back, a small private smile, and then, drawn by the allure of the other toys, he set the rabbit aside. The train needed to be wound up and sent racing around the tracks. The lollipops needed to be tasted. The picture book needed to be opened. And so, the rabbit found himself gently placed on the fur rug beside the bed, where a slant of sunlight warmed his side. The day unfolded with the joyful chaos that only Christmas can bring. Laughter echoed through the house, mingling with the whir of toy airplanes and the chugging of the tin train as it circled its tracks. The boy's voice rang out in delight as he discovered each new surprise, his energy boundless and bright. But in the midst of it all, the rabbit remained quiet, lying where he had been left, watching the sunlight shift across the floor. Later, when the excitement had faded and the wrapping paper had been cleared away, the boy's mother gathered the toys and carried them to the toy room. This was a magical place, filled with treasures of every kind. Rows of tin soldiers stood at attention, a mechanical bear spun and danced, a music box played a tune that seemed to float on the air, and a dragon with painted wings flapped and roared. The room was alive with color and sound, a kingdom where toys came to life when no one was watching. The rabbit was placed on a wooden shelf next to an old doll's box whose paint had chipped away from years of love. Around him, the other toys buzzed with excitement, their gears whirring, their lights flashing. They could sing and move and tell stories with a press of a button. The rabbit, with his soft body and stitched smile, could only sit quietly and watch. No one asked about the rabbit. No one called his name or invited him to join their games. He could not march like the soldiers or dance like the bear. He could not roar or play music. All he could do was listen, to the laughter that drifted in from the hallway, to the stories the other toys told each other, to the quiet tick of the clock as the hours passed. At night, when the room was cloaked in darkness and the house had fallen silent, the rabbit would look up at the ceiling and wonder. If only he could move, if only he could sing, would the boy choose him? Would he be the one cradled in warm arms, carried on adventures, whispered to in the quiet moments before sleep? The thought filled his cotton heart with longing, but also with hope, a fragile, trembling hope that perhaps one day he would be loved. Yet the rabbit was not angry. He did not blame the boy for being drawn to the brighter, noisier toys. He understood, in his own quiet way, that sometimes the simplest things are the easiest to overlook. Still, he waited, his button eyes shining in the moonlight, his soft heart holding on to the dream that the boy would remember him, and that, when he did, he would discover that love can be found in the most unexpected places, quietly, gently, and with a warmth that lasts long after the excitement of Christmas morning has faded away. Night had settled in, deep and gentle, wrapping the toy room in a hush that felt almost sacred. The world outside was quiet, the only sound the occasional sigh of wind brushing past the window, making the panes tremble ever so slightly. Inside, toys sat in their places, each one holding a secret story, a memory, or a longing. The shelves were crowded with tin trains that gleamed faintly, soldiers standing at attention, dolls with painted cheeks, and blocks stacked in forgotten towers. But in the softest shadow near the cupboard, on an old wicker chair, sat the silk rabbit, his fur still smooth and his eyes wide with a longing that he himself did not fully understand. The rabbit was not new, but neither was he old in the way of the skin horse. He had been given as a gift, admired for a moment, and then set aside, overshadowed by brighter, noisier, and more marvelous toys. He watched, night after night, as the boy's hands reached for the shiny train, the roaring dinosaur, the clever puzzle. Sometimes, just sometimes, the boy's eyes would rest on him, and the rabbit's heart would leap, but the moment would pass, and he would be left with only the faint echo of hope. Tonight, the wind seemed to whisper secrets, and the moonlight painted silver paths across the floor. The rabbit, feeling the weight of his own silence, turned his eyes to the oldest toy in the room, the skin horse. The skin horse lay in the corner, his body soft and sagging, his fur worn thin, and his face marked with the gentle scars of long use. One eye was gone, replaced with a careful patch of thread, and his mane was little more than a memory. Yet there was a warmth about him, a quiet dignity, as if he carried within him all the wisdom of the toy room and perhaps something more. Summoning his courage, the rabbit whispered into the hush, his voice barely more than a thought. "Skin horse, are you real?" The skin horse stirred, turning his patched face toward the rabbit. In the dim light, there was a glint of kindness in his remaining eye, a softness that made the rabbit feel safe. "What do you mean, real?" the skin horse asked, his voice gentle and rough, like the sound of leaves rustling in autumn. The rabbit hesitated, searching for words to match the feeling in his chest. "I heard people talk about becoming real. Not just a toy, but something different. Alive, with a soul, with a real heart." The skin horse smiled, and in that smile was all the patience of the world. "Real isn't how you're made," he said quietly. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you, not just for a while, but for a long, long time. When they love you so much that you become part of their world, and they become part of yours. When you've been hugged and carried, and sometimes even forgotten and found again. When you've been loved until you're shabby and worn, and maybe even a little bit ugly. That's when you become real." The words settled in the rabbit's heart like a gentle rain. He thought of the boy, of the moments when he had almost been chosen, almost been loved. He wondered what it would feel like to be real, to be more than just silk and stuffing, to have a heart that beat with love. "Does it hurt?" the rabbit asked softly, his voice trembling with both fear and hope. The skin horse was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that comes from thinking deeply. "Sometimes," he said at last, "when you are real, you might get hurt. Your fur might wear thin, your seams might come undone, and you might lose your shine. But when you are real, none of that matters, because the child who loves you doesn't care about how you look. They love you for who you are, for the way you feel in their arms, for the comfort you bring, and that love makes everything worth it." The rabbit listened, his heart swelling with a longing so sweet it almost hurt. He looked at his own soft paws, at his ears that flopped to one side, and wondered if he could ever be loved in that way. "Can I become real?" he asked, hardly daring to hope. The skin horse's gaze was steady, full of understanding. "If you are lucky and if you truly love, it will happen. It might take time and it might not be easy. But if you keep hope in your heart, and if you are patient, one day you will be loved. And when that happens, you will become real." The room was silent, save for the gentle breathing of the night. The rabbit felt something inside him change, a small, bright spark of hope. He closed his eyes and imagined what it would be like to be held close, to be whispered to in the dark, to be needed and cherished. He imagined the boy's arms around him, the warmth of being chosen, the joy of being loved. As the wind sighed and the moonlight danced across the floor, the rabbit whispered a promise to himself. He would wait. He would hope. He would believe in the magic of love, in the quiet miracle of becoming real. And so, the rabbit settled back on his chair, his heart lighter than it had ever been. He was not yet real, but he knew now that it was possible. He knew that love could transform him, that patience and hope could carry him through the quiet nights. He knew that one day he would be more than just a toy. He would be real, and in that moment, he would belong to the world in a way he had never known before. For now he waited, dreaming gentle dreams, his cotton heart beating softly with hope, and the promise of love yet to come. On a gray morning, when the world seemed to be holding its breath between winter and spring, the house was filled with a quiet chill. The trees outside still wore their bare branches, but tiny buds were beginning to peek through, promising warmth to come. Inside a boy's room was a flurry of restless movement. Drawers were yanked open, blankets thrown aside, and toys scattered across the floor. The boy's face was pinched with worry, his brows drawn tight and his lips pressed together in a line of concern. His voice, small and trembling, broke the silence as he called out, "Where is my bear? My beloved teddy bear is gone!" He searched everywhere, under the bed, behind the heavy curtains, inside the toy chest where forgotten treasures sometimes hid. But the bear, his steadfast companion through countless nights and adventures, was nowhere to be found. The rest of the house was busy with the routines of the day, but the old nanny, who had watched over the boy since his earliest days, noticed the shadow of sadness that had settled over him. With gentle hands, she went to the high wooden shelf where less-used toys waited patiently for their turn. There, nestled among the dust and memories, was the soft silk rabbit. The rabbit's fur was faded, its ears drooped with age, and a small tear had opened on its left leg. Yet, as the nanny lifted Rabbit down, the morning light caught on its black glass eyes, giving them a curious glimmer, as if the moonlight from the night before still lingered on its soft fabric. She placed Rabbit in the boy's arms with a smile. "This rabbit is still very cute. Can you play with him today?" The boy looked down at Rabbit, uncertain at first, but in that moment, something seemed to spark in Rabbit's eyes, a reflection from the window, perhaps, or maybe something more. The boy pulled the rabbit close, the plush softness a small comfort in his empty arms. Okay, he whispered. "I'll play with Rabbit today." And with that simple promise, everything began to change. No longer was Rabbit left alone in the shadowy corners of the room. That day, the boy carried Rabbit everywhere he went. Out into the garden, where the grass was thick and cool beneath their feet, and dandelions swayed in the breeze. The boy ran, leaping over puddles and chasing after butterflies, always with Rabbit clutched tightly in his hand. When the boy rode his little cart down the winding garden path, Rabbit rode with him, bouncing along with every bump and turn. The sunlight played over Rabbit's faded fur, warming it, making it glow softly in the afternoon light. "You are my best friend," the boy whispered during nap time, curling up with Rabbit tucked beneath his chin. "From now on, I will always carry you with me." At night, wrapped in the safety of his blanket, the boy shared his secrets and dreams with Rabbit. He spoke of castles floating on clouds, of pirate ships sailing seas made of pillows, of dragons and heroes and magical lands only children could imagine. Rabbit listened to every word, his stitched smile never faltering, his heart quietly swelling with each story. The boy never seemed to notice that Rabbit couldn't move on his own, or speak or glow with the magic of the toys and fairy tales. To him, Rabbit was perfect, a friend who was always there, always listening, always gentle. And in the quiet moments, Rabbit felt something new and wonderful blooming inside him, a warmth that grew with every hug, every whispered secret, every moment spent together. Days passed, and Rabbit's fur grew thinner in the places where he was hugged the most, his soft belly, his long ears, his little feet. A patch of fabric wore away on his side, the stuffing inside peeking through. But Rabbit didn't mind. Every worn spot, every loose thread, felt like a badge of honor, a sign of love, proof that he was truly cherished. Then, one night, as the boy slept peacefully, the moonlight poured through the window, painting the room in silver. Rabbit lay nestled in the crook of the boy's arm, still and quiet. But something was different. There was no sudden flash, no shower of fairy dust, no music to mark the moment. Instead, a gentle warmth stirred deep inside Rabbit, like a tiny seed sprouting in the dark earth. "Am I becoming real?" Rabbit wondered. The thought barely more than a whisper in the quiet room. There was no answer. Only the soft rustle of the wind against the curtains, as if the world itself was nodding gently in reply. From that moment, Rabbit was more than just a toy. He was a friend, a companion, a cherished part of the boy's world. The boy might not have noticed the change, might not have understood the miracle that was taking place. But every time he hugged Rabbit close, every time he whispered his dreams or fears or joys, the magic grew a little stronger. Rabbit still wasn't sure what it meant to be real. He couldn't move on his own or speak aloud, but he felt his cotton heart beating with a new, quiet joy. He was no longer just an object on a shelf or a forgotten toy in a dusty corner. He was loved, truly and deeply, and that love was transforming him from the inside out. As the days turned into weeks and the garden outside burst into full, riotous bloom, Rabbit and the boy became inseparable. Together they explored the world, both real and imagined, their bond growing stronger with every shared adventure. And though Rabbit's fur grew ever more worn and his stitches loosened with time, he knew that he was becoming something wonderful, something that could only be made through love. In the gentle hush of night, as the boy drifted into dreams and the stars watched over them, Rabbit felt the miracle unfolding within him. A miracle born not of magic or wishes, but of the simple, steadfast love of a child. And in that quiet, sacred space, Rabbit understood. To be loved, truly loved, is the greatest miracle of all. Time drifted onward, slow and heavy, in the hush of the old garden. For so long, soft Silk Rabbit had known only joy. Those sunlit days spent tumbling in the grass, the warmth of the boy's arms at night, the gentle murmur of secrets shared in the darkness. Each moment was a treasure, stitched into his cotton heart, making it thrum with something that almost felt like life. The boy's laughter, bright and golden, had filled Rabbit's world with meaning. He was loved, and in that love, he had become real. But summer brought change. The air, thick with pollen and the scent of distant flowers, carried a hidden shadow. Illness crept in quietly, like a chill beneath the door. It started with a headache, then a fever that burned hot and relentless. The boy grew quiet, his laughter stilled, his energy faded. Days blurred together, each one dimmer than the last. The curtain stayed drawn, muting the world to a gray twilight. The doctor's visits became routine, the nurse's footsteps soft and careful. Bowls of porridge and cool cloths came and went, but the boy remained still, his small body fighting battles within. Through it all, Rabbit never left his side. He nestled close to the boy's pillow, his own fur damp with the sweat and tears of long nights. The boy's fingers, weak but determined, always found Rabbit, clutching him tightly as if afraid that letting go would mean losing the last bit of comfort in the world. In those quiet hours, Rabbit listened to the sound of the boy's breathing, sometimes rapid and shallow, sometimes slow and ragged. The clock ticked on, marking time with a steady patience that Rabbit tried to imitate. He was silent, steadfast, a gentle presence in a room filled with worry. Rabbit made a promise, deep and unspoken. As long as you need me, I will stay, no matter what. It was a promise woven from loyalty, from love, from the very threads of his being. At last, after what felt like forever, a new morning arrived. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, painting golden stripes across the bed. The boy opened his eyes, and for the first time in days, he smiled. Color returned to his cheeks, and though his eyes were tired, they sparkled with hope. The doctor came, felt his forehead, and nodded, a small gesture that meant everything. "He's going to be all right," the doctor said. Relief swept through the house like a fresh breeze. The nurse smiled, the parents' shoulders sagged with gratitude, and even the walls seemed to brighten. But then the doctor's voice grew quiet, and his next words fell like a stone into a pond, sending ripples of fear and sadness through the room. "To prevent infection," he said, "everything in this room must be destroyed. Blankets, pillows, bedsheets, toys, nothing can be kept." No one thought to ask Rabbit how he felt. No one paused to consider the memories stitched into his seams, or the love that filled his cotton heart. In the afternoon, as the boy was moved to a fresh room, the servant gathered all the old things, the bedding, the worn pajamas, and soft silk rabbit, and bundled them into a faded cloth sack. They were carried out to the back garden, where a pile of dry leaves waited to be burned. There were no goodbyes, no last hugs, no lingering glances. Rabbit was left alone, lying atop the cold, damp leaves, surrounded by the smells of earth and smoke. The sky above was pale and heavy, the sun hidden behind a veil of gray clouds. The wind shifted, and with it the world seemed to forget him. Rabbit's fur was no longer soft and clean. His seams were stretched, his color faded. But what hurt most was the emptiness inside. The ache of being left behind, the weight of memories pressing down on his cotton heart. "Is this how it ends?" Rabbit wondered. "After all those days of laughter and love, am I just an old thing waiting for the fire?" The garden grew darker as evening fell. Leaves drifted down, settling around Rabbit like a blanket. The world was quiet, except for the distant rustle of trees and the faint, mournful call of a bird. Rabbit lay still, unable to move, unable to cry out. All he could do was remember. He remembered the boy's smile, the way his arms had held Rabbit close at night. He remembered the sound of laughter, the feel of grass beneath his paws, the warmth of sunlight on his fur. He remembered the old stuffed horse's words, spoken long ago in the nursery. "When a child truly loves you, you become real." So I was real, Rabbit thought. I was loved. But why does it hurt so much to be left behind? A breeze stirred the pile of leaves, sending a single curled leaf tumbling down to rest beside Rabbit's cheek. In that moment, a deep, aching sadness welled up inside him, so strong, so pure that it could not be contained. For the first time in his life, Rabbit cried. A single silvery tear slipped from the corner of his black daisy eye, tracing a path through the dust and landing softly on the earth below. It was a real tear, born of real sorrow. It shimmered in the fading light, a tiny testament to all that Rabbit had felt and lost. As the tear touched the soil, the world seemed to pause. The wind stilled, the trees ceased their whispering, and the sky held its breath. Time itself seemed to hover, waiting. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The sorrow that filled Rabbit's heart did not go unnoticed. The universe, vast and mysterious, heard his silent plea. The magic that lives in the spaces between heartbeats and memories stirred to life. Rabbit did not know it yet, but change was coming. The pain of separation, the ache of loss, these were not the end of his story. They were the beginning of something new, something wondrous. For in the deepest loneliness, in the truest love, magic finds its way. Time, gentle and unhurried, drifted onward like petals caught in a soft spring breeze. The world changed, yet some things remained. The hush of dawn, the laughter of wind in the trees, the warmth of sunlight spilling over a green and living earth. For Rabbit, everything was new, yet everything was also somehow familiar, as if he had always belonged to this wild, wonderful world. From that fateful day, the day he became real, Rabbit found himself living among the wild rabbits in the forest beyond the old garden fence. No longer did he wait on a nursery shelf or rest in the crook of a small arm. Now, he was alive in every sense, running through dew-laden grass, feeling the cool earth beneath his paws, and breathing in the scents of moss and clover. The other rabbits welcomed him, and together they played beneath the leafy canopy, darting between shadows, chasing each other through the undergrowth, and sharing secret hideaways beneath tangled brambles. Each day brought new lessons. Rabbit learned to dig burrows deep and safe, to nibble the sweetest tips of young grass, and to freeze in stillness at the faintest sound of wings overhead. He discovered how to listen, to the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft approach of rain. He learned to trust his instincts, to leap with joy, and to rest quietly in the dappled sunlight. Life was simple and good, filled with the quiet pleasures of belonging and the thrill of discovery. Yet, deep within his heart, Rabbit carried a gentle, unspoken longing. It was not sadness nor regret, but a tender memory that lingered like the last note of a lullaby. In a quiet corner of his soul, the boy lived on, a part of him forever. Sometimes, when the world was still and the stars blinked overhead, Rabbit would remember the warmth of small hands, the sound of laughter, the feeling of being cherished. These memories did not weigh him down. Instead, they floated within him, light as air, a reminder of love's enduring magic. Then, one morning, as spring unfurled her green banners and the world shimmered with new life, something extraordinary happened. The sky was a flawless blue, the air sweet with the scent of blossoming grass, and the garden beyond the fence was alive with the promise of adventure. On the other side of the weathered wooden fence, the boy was playing alone. He had grown since Rabbit had last seen him, his hair a little longer, his cheeks touched with the healthy glow of recovery. In his hand, he carried a bamboo fishing rod, and a straw hat perched jauntily on his head, tilted by the playful breeze. He wandered the garden, gathering wildflowers, chasing the shadows of bees, and laughing at the simple joys of spring. The world seemed to sparkle, every sound and color brighter than before. As he wandered, the boy's gaze fell upon a rabbit, standing quietly beneath the spreading branches of a small apple tree. The rabbit's fur glimmered in the sunlight, a soft gray-brown touched with silver. Its ears twitched, alert yet calm, and its eyes, deep, dark, and shining, held a familiar spark. The boy stopped, uncertain. Something stirred within him, a memory just out of reach. He stared at the rabbit, his brow furrowed in thought. "This rabbit looks familiar," he whispered to himself, the words floating on the breeze like dandelion seeds. He took a hesitant step forward. The rabbit did not flee. Instead, it watched him with quiet curiosity, head tilted, ears perked. The boy's heart fluttered, caught between hope and disbelief. He knelt in the grass, his hands resting on his knees, and looked more closely. "I used to have a rabbit like that, when I was very young. Same color, same eyes." His voice was soft, tinged with wonder and a hint of sorrow. A smile touched his lips, gentle and wistful, as if he had stumbled upon a precious memory long forgotten. For a moment the world seemed to pause, suspended in the golden light of afternoon. But as quickly as it came, the moment passed. The rabbit turned, hopping a few steps toward the sheltering woods. The boy watched, his eyes shining with unshed tears, not fully understanding why his heart ached, or why he felt both joy and loss at once. "I must have imagined it," he murmured, rising to his feet, the memory already fading like mist in the morning sun. And Rabbit, now truly real, paused at the edge of the wildflowers, looking back one last time. He saw the boy, not as he had been, but as he was now, older, stronger, yet still carrying the gentle heart that had once loved him so dearly. Rabbit knew the boy might never remember him fully, might never recognize the toy he had cherished, but that was all right. Love, once given, never truly disappears. Rabbit turned and leapt into the welcoming embrace of the forest. The world was wide and full of wonders, and he belonged to it now. But within him, the memory of the boy glowed softly, a beacon of warmth and hope that would never fade. Because love, when it is real, is eternal. It endures in quiet moments, in the hush of dawn, in the laughter of the wind, and in the gentle touch of sunlight on fur. It lives on in memories, in dreams, and in the secret places of the heart. Like the roots of an ancient tree, it holds fast beneath the surface, unseen but unbreakable. And so Rabbit's story did not end, but began anew. For when a toy is truly loved, when it becomes real, it is never forgotten. It lives on, not just in the world, but in the hearts of those who loved it. And that is the greatest magic of all. The end and also the beginning.